Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're untangling the dense geopolitical web of May 29, 2026, and showing you exactly how these global tremors connect right back to your daily life. We're living in a deeply interconnected world right now, where a decision made in a closed-door war room can literally impact the price you pay at the grocery store the very next day.
We've got a lot of ground to cover today, starting with global flashpoints, tracking their economic ripple effects, diving into Japan's dual crises, looking at global health and defense, and finally wrapping up with legal and domestic updates. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. Global flashpoints and tensions.
Okay, so we are seeing some completely polarized narratives coming out of Washington and Tehran right now, following President Trump's intense 2-hour Situation Room meeting. They're debating a proposed 60-day ceasefire and reopening the Strait of Hormuz. The White House is saying, hey, this tentative deal satisfies our red lines and blocks the nuclear weapons threat. But Iranian officials, they are pushing back immediately. They're calling the claims about destroying enriched uranium a mixture of truth and lies. So the big takeaway here is that while we are taking tentative steps toward peace, the foundational facts of this dialogue are still being hotly contested in real time.
And while these high-level talks are happening, things on the ground remain incredibly fragile. Iranian state media just claimed their military successfully shot down an American jet near the city of Jam. But U.S. Central Command? They issued a flat-out, unequivocal denial. They stated firmly that absolutely no American aircraft had been downed or compromised anywhere in the region. It's a stark reminder of how quickly localized incidents, or even just conflicting reports of them, can threaten to derail broader diplomatic efforts.
But tensions aren't just isolated to the Middle East. We're seeing serious escalations globally. First, there was a grave breach of NATO airspace. A Russian drone, which was initially targeting Ukrainian infrastructure, veered off course and crashed straight into a residential apartment building in Galatz, Romania, injuring 2 civilians. And, concurrently, over in Mount Lebanon, an Israeli airstrike hit the town of Chuafate. This blast tragically killed 3 people, including 2 children, and wounded 15 others. Real, tangible tragedies unfolding.
So, with the geopolitical map looking incredibly tense right now, you might be wondering, how does a tentative ceasefire thousands of miles away in the Strait of Hormuz actually hit your wallet? Let's trace the ripple effect.
Which brings us to Section 2, the economic ripple effects.
12%. Think about that for a second. We literally just witnessed a massive 12% plunge in global oil prices over a single week. It's easing those intense global inflation fears and marks one of the commodity's biggest monthly drops ever. And the crazy part? It was driven entirely by financial market optimism that the US-Iran conflict might actually be cooling down.
What does that look like in real terms? Well, it translates directly to consumer savings. Brent crude sank to $91.54 a barrel, and WTI fell to $87.64. For those of us hitting the pump, following a year-high peak just a week prior, the U.S. national average for regular gas dropped 16 cents down to $4.39 a gallon. Energy experts are attributing this quick stabilization directly to speculative hopes that the Strait of Hormuz will stay open.
But here's where it gets complicated. The global supply chain is like a giant puzzle. While U.S. drivers are getting immediate relief at the pump, lingering logistical costs and supply chain disruptions from the Middle East are simultaneously jacking up food prices in Asia. Japanese consumer reports are actively warning citizens to brace for sharp price hikes coming this June on over 1,000 food and beverage items. It really shows how a win in one hemisphere can be a squeeze in the other.
And speaking of that economic squeeze in Asia, let's dive into Section 3, Japan's dual national crises.
Japan is fighting a historic demographic battle right now. Newly released census data shows that Japan's total population, even including foreign residents, plummeted by a record 2.5%. To put that into perspective, that equates to a massive 3.1 million person drop in just 5 years. That is staggering.
And this shrinkage is creating some severe geographic strain. Right now, over 30% of Japan's entire remaining population is packed strictly within Tokyo. It highlights this intense urbanization pressure, while the rural areas are basically emptying out as the overall population shrinks.
So what do you do when facing an existential demographic freefall? Well, the Japanese parliament just enacted sweeping legislation designed to make childbirth virtually free in principle. It is an unprecedented domestic policy shift aimed squarely at incentivizing population growth, especially while everyday citizens are facing those looming food price hikes we just talked about.
But they aren't just looking inward. At the exact same time, Japan is making a historic international defense pivot. They've officially dispatched 4 self-defense force personnel all the way to NATO's Ukraine support hub in Germany to directly absorb modern tactical warfare lessons. Meanwhile, over in Singapore, Defense Minister Shinjiro Koizumi is advancing crucial export talks for their high-tech Mogami-class military frigates with New Zealand and Australia. They are fundamentally modernizing their defense posture on the world stage.
Expanding on that theme of international security, let's look at Section 4, Global Health and Defense.
We are seeing 2 really significant sovereign maneuvers unfold right now. First, in a massive scramble to halt the spread of the Central African Ebola epidemic, Nigeria has enacted strict flight restrictions. They are halting all inbound air travel from the Democratic Republic of Congo, South Sudan, and Uganda, taking absolutely no chances. Up north, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney made a major defense call. Canada is bypassing competing American options to purchase European-built airborne surveillance planes. It's a clear move to safeguard their Arctic sovereignty while really prioritizing strategic European-Canadian defense ties over traditional U.S. partnerships.
All right, let's bring it back stateside for Section 5, Legal and Domestic Updates.
We've got a major legal development here at home. U.S. District Judge Leonie Brinkema just issued a temporary restraining order freezing President Trump's proposed $1.8 billion DOJ compensation fund. This money was intended to compensate citizens alleging political targeting by past administrations, but the federal court ruled the freeze was necessary to prevent any premature fund transfers. On a much heavier, tragic local note, emergency responders in Stafford County, Virginia, handled a horrific crash on Interstate 95. A commercial passenger bus collided with 6 separate vehicles, leaving 5 people dead and 34 others hospitalized with severe injuries. Absolutely heartbreaking.
And rounding out our global updates today, some incredibly sobering news has emerged from Kenya. Police investigators in Nakuru County have officially ruled that a devastating girls' school fire was a deliberate act of arson, leading to the high-profile arrest of 8 female students. Concurrently, state authorities have entirely dissolved the school's board for blatant fire safety negligence. It's a really dark situation. So as we wrap up this explainer, let's take a step back. We've seen today how a tentative, hotly contested peace negotiation in the Strait of Hormuz can literally stabilize global oil markets in an instant, bringing relief to the pump. Yet, at the exact same time, regional conflicts from Romania to Lebanon are actively escalating in real time. In a world this deeply interconnected, where a single political meeting can crash global oil prices overnight, which force will ultimately shape the rest of 2026? Will diplomacy hold the line, or will conflict define the remainder of our year? Thanks for joining me today, and as always, keep questioning the ripples around you.